Welcome, everyone. My name is Chris Dieringer.
And I'm Christopher Davis.
And today we're here to talk about, or the tagline in the slide is to talk about AI-driven excellence in customer experiences. But what that really means is we're going to be talking about chatbots, a little bit of AI, some machine learning, all within the context of retail and CPG, or consumer packaged goods. So let's go a bit deeper into who we are. My name is Chris Dieringer, and I'm the National Director for our U.S. Retail and CPG industry practice. A little bit about me. I've been at Microsoft now for 12 years in various different roles. I did spend 5 Black Fridays in our Microsoft retail stores as a technology director, helping us move from about 30 stores to 115 evolving all stores to about a $3.2 billion business, part of our roughly $8 billion consumer goods practice. After that, and most currently what I do is I lead our retail and CPG industry teams, leading both the industry experts that we have within our team as well as the technical specialists that help us focus on the, let's say, current and future trends that are in the marketplace, and then help our customers through the digital transformation and realize those depending on where they're at in that journey.
And I'm Christopher Davis. I head up our architecture practice in the Northwest here for retail and CPG companies. And I work with our customers to really help them modernize and digitize their retail and CPG businesses, really all up and down the West Coast. But I've been at Microsoft for about a year and a half. Before that, I've got a long background in engineering, led and built several engineering teams, and directly before Microsoft, worked in large companies building out cloud-native architectures in the retail environment.
Excellent. So you guys will like me because I brought him here with us to talk about AI today. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on. Within our agenda that we have today, so we went through our opening remarks. We can check that piece off. We're going to go through a solution showcase. So there's a couple different examples that we're going to talk about around conversational commerce, employee productivity, and then process automation. We'll talk about a couple customer examples. We have Macy's. We've done some stuff with Hewlett-Packard as well. And then even our own internal transformation inside of Microsoft we'll mention a little bit. And then close with some next steps and final remarks. So I wanted to touch briefly before we move forward on what we do, or what Chris and I do from a retail industry perspective within CPG as well in the U.S. So the team's made up of 2 factions. One, we've hired deep technical or deep industry experts within the marketplace. So we pulled folks out of Macy's, out of Mars, out of Nordstrom, out of Nike, out of Unilever, out of Procter & Gamble. Folks who have been steeped in the retail practice and in the CPG practice, so we can have those credible conversations with line of business or C-suite executives, those that sit within, let's see, the customer or the chief marketing officer, the chief customer officer, the head of supply chain, the general manager of merchandising, the VP of store ops. Any one of those folks are targeted audiences that we can have conversations with. Once we've had that relevant conversation, we then have folks like Chris, who from a technical leadership drive and have a deep technical understanding and that experience both in retail CPG to discover and describe how we would execute against many of the conversations that we have. Finally, I think, Chris, we've got about 18 or so people on our team. We scale through our partner ecosystem. So our partners have found and built a lot of hardened IP on top of our platform. And the magic really is identifying the unique problem that a customer is trying to solve, the unique partner that has a solution on our platform that we can bring together is sort of where the magic applies. And we do that through a couple different ways on the right. Again, as I mentioned, we have those industry-led experts who can be that trusted advisor, can go through executive workshops to have that business value assessment. But we can also apply both resources and strategic funding to seed investments to accelerate projects as we need to. And then finally, Chris, I think just left to a few of these down in California, we'll have hackathons where we can work deep with your data scientists, we can work deep with your developers to help you understand what type of machine learning practices that we have, how our tools work, and any type of artificial intelligence frameworks you're trying to build around our Azure framework that we have today that's also out on our Azure Marketplace.
Exactly. And those hackathons or those workshops are really geared towards helping you move your business to that next level, modernize and digitize through our cloud platform.
Absolutely. So that's the unique value that we put a plug in for as far as what we can do and how we can help retailers and CPGs out there today. And what I wanted to talk about in this next slide is, not only has there been a transformation in the industry, but Microsoft has gone through a transformation as well. And traditionally, you might have heard Microsoft, when they talk to you as a customer or as a partner, is centered around products and centered around technology. And the focus that we have is more centered around conversations and centered around problems. We're not selling products per se. We have products that will solve solutions, but we want to make sure that we're identifying the right area for us to apply our unique solutions in those key motions. And those key motions are here in our 4 pillars of digital transformation. The first is engage customers. So we have a ton of things that we're going to cover soon around personalization, chatbots, and AI, and how this can impact and drive customer interactions and revenue within your business. We talk about empower employees next. I think there's a ridiculous stat out there that $460 billion are lost in the disenfranchised associate. So we're going to talk about ways to connect them tighter to your brand and be that brand ambassador and assisted sales that they'll have today. Optimize operations is a large space. So in every one of your areas, from finance, marketing, strategic planning, HR, store operations, there's many different components that we can do and work with to help move the scale along or move the point along with digital transformation. And the last one is transform your product or transform your brands. Customers are finding that they can leverage a lot of valuable IP within their own data estates. And there's a lot of cross-sharing and even revenue opportunities that they can have amongst retailers and CPGs with the unique value that the interactions that they capture with customers today. Yeah. Moving right along, we're going to talk about how the world of retail is evolving. So I'm going to transition over to Chris to talk about a few of the points here on this next slide.
Sure. So if you really look at traditional retail over the years, you have this from-to effect that's happening now, where you have multiple parts of the company that have these different silos of information, across supply chain or HR or marketing, and they really end up they create these disconnected experiences for customers. So you think about that idea of those 50 first dates, where a customer might find you online, they'll interact with you there, you'll go into the store, you don't know who they are, you can't really have that personalized conversation. There's this old mentality of transaction-only customers and pushing out advertisements, pushing out marketing. And really what customers are gravitating towards today and what makes a really great customer experience is that seamless and integrated retail across omni-channel, where you can go online, you can shop online, you can go in store. You could buy online, pick up in store, or vice versa. There's a real kind of pull model where customers are going out and they're seeking these really sticky, great brand experiences. And the physical retail world is evolving as well. I think in the past, we had these massive retail spaces. And really today, we're seeing that that's not as sustainable as it once was. And people really want to go to stores for instant gratification in many cases, but also to have a really great personalized experience. And that personalization is really a key part of where retail to today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you've heard a lot of people talk about the retail apocalypse. And I think that's some good clickbait to draw folks in to read various or take their own interpretations of those messages. But I'd say it's more of a right sizing. I think there's been an incredible amount of exponential growth. There were certain department stores and brands that I think sort of hold on to their laurels a little bit from that perspective. And so there's a modern economy that is now adjusted and focused on experience. I think if you look at the millennials today, right, or if you choose them as a shopping market, they spent 25% more than any other generation over this last Black Friday. I think it was $425 for average basket of goods. And 78% of that generation will choose brand and experience, will choose experience. So they're definitely brand agnostic. They've got disposable income right now based on the choices that they're making as a generation. And capturing that personalized experience with this captive audience is a place that you definitely want to make sure you're focusing. And I think we're going to get to some of those as we move forward. one thing just to point out in Microsoft in this space is we talk about this as the AI arms race to a degree. And Microsoft is definitely focused and is focused from the leadership all the way down around artificial intelligence. And we'll go specifically on what that means and how that applies to a retailer in a bit. But we wanted to show from an investment perspective, we are nearly 100% behind this from a product perspective, as well as where we think the future of our technology practice needs to go to enable our retailers and CPG companies to be as ready for the modern economy and the stores and the generations of 2020 that we talk about moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And one interesting thing about this graph I just want to point out, if you look at the company research papers published a few years ago, those are really leading to a lot of the innovations and the APIs and the services that we have today. And also, it underscores our commitment towards open source. If you look at the size of our portfolio and the amount of research that we're putting back into the community, it's a really key differentiator. And I think it really underscores where Microsoft is evolving to as a company, being more open and more ready to embrace other technologies as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great point as far as where we've shifted over the last, you say 5 years.
Yeah.
It's a good point, Chris. So transformative solutions for retail. You can see we've broken this up in a few different areas. So we're getting a little bit more specific. One, I think, on the marketing side, which is up front, and then two, on the more back-end operations. From personalization, I like to define that, and that touches a lot of these in the front, in three main buckets, which is proximity, identity, and content. So from a proximity perspective, do you know where people are spending their time, what their behavioral stopping parts are? If you look at the blending the digital and physical worlds together, I think there's a stat out there, right, that says Amazon makes 30% of its revenue off of its recommendation engine. That's an incredible amount of money. That's an incredible amount of money that they make on the retail side off of knowing your wish list, knowing who you are from a digital identity, where you're looking at certain products and where your clicks are. But, brick and mortar retailers will lose a lot of that as someone walks anonymously into a store. So there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different sensors where we can talk capturing individuals, blending that digital and physical world together. So you can give a personalized experience to someone as they walk into a store. And then the behavioral patterns that they're moving and walking through in your store, and you can deliver them a personalized message based on their behavior and based on who they are. And again, through sensors, through your mobile app that you have on your phone. A lot of companies talk about that as being the new flagship, as a place for you to connect up and see those individuals. And then not only that, if you look at market operations or dynamic pricing, you're able to drive, with your outbound marketing organizations, drive like either life cycle or nurture campaigns directly to these individuals for relevant content, and then provide their unique pricing, right? So if you tie that up through a CRM system, right, you can see not only the collection of behavioral decisions that they've made, but you can start to send them that targeted messages as we talked about before. And then if you go in the back end of operations, there's so many different components. I'll talk later about recommendation engines and what we can do and how you can use machine learning to build a lot of data, capture all of that, and then get various recommendations for marketers on campaign engines, for finance around predictive forecasts, for merchandisers on what products to put on the shelf for inventory optimization. There's many different ways that you can bring that together where technology can assist people steeped in the industry that they're in today. Yeah.
So all of these different pieces of data across the organization, as they all come together, they really are leading us to a few points we really wanted to talk about today. The first is around conversational commerce. You see a lot of companies are starting to delve into conversational commerce. So just to talk a little bit about what that means, how to implement that. If you look at all of these kind of different boxes we have up here on this slide, these really show you the power of taking that data that you have across your organization and really having a personalized, artificially intelligence-driven conversation with your customers. I think the first one, which is the easiest possible example, is a product QA, an FAQ. That's almost an absolute no-brainer to put that into effect. You're going to ask a question, you're going to get an answer back. Fairly straightforward to implement.
Chris, when you mentioned that, though, I think in some other companies they work with, how fast, if you have your frequently asked questions or a fact sheet, can you integrate that into our Azure framework?
a day. The APIs are just amazingly simple to use. And that you're talking about a scalable service that you're not going to have to worry about taking it out of some other environment and spending weeks to publish it. I mean, we're talking about production-ready, AI-driven FAQs published out to your mobile app or website or wherever you're going to publish that. So that's a great example of a really low-hanging fruit if you're looking to move into this area, if you haven't done that already. Some other areas that get a little more complicated, you want to start thinking about integrating recommendation engines, and that comes from all that data that you're getting across your enterprise, all your data about your customers. And that can lead to the ability to upsell and cross-sell advertising during conversations, proactive notifications, product selections and recommendations. And if you're looking at this and saying, oh, well, advertising through a conversation, I'm not sure about that. Actually, there's been some recent surveys that show really less than 10% of consumers are worried about advertising being given to them through artificial intelligence. In fact, most consumers are absolutely open to it, especially under two main conditions. One is that it's relevant to them. It echoes how people shop online and the success of Amazon and their recommendation engines and others who have put recommendation engines in place. People really appreciate that personalized experience, and you know them, and you can suggest these things that they would probably want. And then so that would be one main reason why people wouldn't mind. And another one, not only being relevant, but if they explicitly ask for help from this artificial intelligence, then they really expect those advertisements to come through. So it's not really something to worry about. It's something that people are actually expecting and embracing. And so you can see all of that, and all of that is absolutely possible through these frameworks. And then the last one on here is transactions. And that goes back to, that's part of retail that'll never change. So earlier we were saying from to, wasn't saying transactions were bad, but a transaction-only mindset is bad. And so, we give you that ability to integrate your point-of-sale system or whatever your point-of-sale system is, to be able to integrate into that conversational commerce.
Excellent. As we transition into this next slide, I know you go into it, but at least if we start to get more specific around AI and chatbots specifically, there are three kind of principles that I'll think about around chatbots and AI and the value that they can bring if you start to think about it in today's new environment. One is it helps create affinity. And by that, you have one brand ambassador that cuts across multiple channels, and it delivers a direct message that you can be consistent across your avenue. And we'll go into some actual metrics on how that's impacted us inside of Microsoft and Macy's and HP and other examples. It engages with your customer across your brand, across your products, and across your services. And then finally, it builds relationships. So you build a customer profile over time through the continuous interactions that you have. So those three areas are ways that you really can leverage from a bot or a chat bot if you think about retail and CPG.
Talking about customer engagement, and we talked a bit about how conversational commerce plays into this. Really, kind of that next step beyond conversational commerce. If you think about your own bot on your own digital property or that you own, is going to be a pretty straightforward conversational commerce. But the next layer on top of that is that concept of a personal shopping assistant, which is really a subset of personal digital assistants, which we see gaining a lot of momentum today. And they really will compare products for you. One of the really interesting aspects that I like to underscore here is they integrate into your life. And maybe that sounds a little bit weird at first, but when you look at where these digital agents are going, if you think about an example, I just went camping a week ago, and we have orders set up, regular orders set up to be delivered to our house. Now, if you think about integrating intelligence across your calendar and your schedule, with your shopping, it would have been great if the personal assistant would have looked at my calendar and said, I see you're going camping. Instead of giving you milk, which is perishable, then maybe you need to order these other things that you're going to take along. Giving those types of recommendations, not just recommendations based on your shopping history, but based on your behavior cohesively. And two types of kind of just a nuance here about personal shopping assistants I wanted to point out. One, you can think about what we like to call a brand first personal shopping assistant, or PSA. And for there, you think about a major e-tailer that's going to have multiple brands, or a grocery store, something like that. It's going to have multiple brands. There is a good opportunity to have their own personal shopping assistant to assist people with shopping across basically the CPG companies that are using them as a channel. Right. But then you also have this consumer first type of personal shopping assistant. And that is more of what I was describing earlier, where they're going to integrate more with your calendar, all the things that personal assistants can help you with, and really look across all the different brands. And for that type of personal shopping assistant, it's important for retailers to start making sure they're thinking about their own direct-to-consumer strategy, because that is what's going to be able to interface with these personal assistants as they become more and more popular.
Great.
So, and just a couple tips I wanted to, if you're looking at this and thinking, I'd love to get my hands dirty and start building out personal assistants, absolutely, please go do that. But a few tips that I've found as I've been working with teams and building these myself, I just wanted to put out there. One, make sure your personal assistant is staying focused. Conversational AI works best when it can guide the conversation really, and when it can focus on its task at hand. Often people aren't going to bring up a digital assistant and just have a random conversation with it. They're bringing it up because they want something. So making sure that you're not leaving things wide open, that makes it a lot harder to figure out people's intents and really serve them best. So make sure you're keeping your artificial intelligence as focused as possible. Another part of that is think about your brand. How are you conveying your brand through the artificial intelligence? If you're talking with anybody, they're making an impression on you, and you're basically, I don't want to say you're judging them, but you're making assumptions about them, lots of assumptions in your mind based on how they communicate. And so people are naturally going to do that with artificial intelligence as well. And so as you're building your conversationalist, make sure you're conveying your brand. You're speaking to your customer. You are speaking to your customer. And that artificial intelligence has to reflect that.
Chris, and one thing there, I think a great example is if you go out to Progressive today, quick plug on them, through Facebook Messenger, I think it's the Flowbot that they have. They've done an excellent job on top of our platform of capturing the spirit or essence of Flow and integrating that into her responses, into the way that you'll interact and talk with her. I highly recommend now to go out and just test it, have a conversation. If you drop off for a while, I think I've seen her say, "You're not driving and texting me, are you?" I mean, there's a series of wit and banter where they've captured her personality, the brand that Progressive is trying to drive, and put that out there into a way that I think they've really captured it well.
Absolutely, that is a great example.
Yeah.
And then the last point I wanted to make is make it personal. So we talk about overlaying that recommendation engine, all the data you have to make sure you understand your customer. Make sure you're building that into your bot, and you're really using your customer's profile to make sure you're personalizing conversations, bringing up relevant recommendations and things along those lines.
Chris, one other thing, just to talk about timing, how hard or not hard some of these things are. I know we recently worked on a project not too long ago with a large grocery chain, and they wanted help with order assisting, right? So the example was, I'm driving in my car, and I'd like to add a Coke to my order, right? So they simply say in their car to their personal assistant, I'd like to pick up a 2-liter cola, right? So there's a lot of clarifying questions around that, right? Are you going to pick that up today? Is it a 2-liter? Is it diet? Is it not? Is it tomorrow? You already have our current order today, right? What would we, do you want it added to that? Well, along with you picking up cola, are you looking for half off on chips? So there's a whole series of things to guide a customer, one, to get specific around what it is they're looking for, but then two, cross-sell and upsell. That's a pretty complex process to go through. One, you're talking through a vehicle, your phone that's got to connect up and interact with the bot, and it's got to tie up with many different systems, ordering, in-store inventory. How long did that take you to put together, Chris?
So the proof of concept was really quick. It was really only a few days to be able to demonstrate the technology. And when I say a few days, what we're talking about there is, using Xamarin to build a cross-platform application. Yep. So we were able to show it on iOS and Android. And and Windows Phone.
Yep.
And
for our market share.
The conversation was built into it. So all of those clarifying questions were part of that conversation flow. And the whole integration with the transactional processing was also something that's fairly straightforward to implement. The sticky part, and if engineers out there are, I'm sure, going to agree with me here, always comes on integration.
Sure.
And so that's really where you're going to find any kind of potential hiccups in the project, or anything that's going to take a bit of time. It's really how complex those integrations have to be, and how much data you need to pull in and interact with. But getting the proof of concept up and running, something that we could bring back to the business to get buy-in for this concept, was actually very quick.
Awesome. Cool. I just want to try to give a sense of how long some of these things take or how massive it is. And then again, as we talked to before, Chris and I within the U.S. Work with many retailers and CPGs on how to accelerate these internally in your own organization. So now we're going to get to employee empowerment.
So we're talking about AI and conversational commerce from the perspective of the customer, really how they're interacting with your AI. But in the context of retail, another key thing to think about is your frontline workers, the people on the floor that are interacting with your customers every single day across the enterprise. So if you think about this frictionless access to data and information, this is a key way that you can improve customer service and really empower your employees, help them become more efficient and improve job satisfaction. If you think about where voice interfaces really work on the retail floor, imagine a store manager having to run into the back, checking schedules, checking inventory, whatever, stuff like that. If you think about someone asks someone a question they don't know, they have to go look it up, delivering training, things of that nature. Being able to have a conversational interface where an employee can quickly get that information and immediately serve a customer is really key to having faster, more efficient customer service. And then you take that and you overlay the recommendations and that understanding of your customer and your CRM into that, and now you have that artificial intelligence in the hands of your employees. So you have this human communication and that human interaction, but enhanced by the artificial intelligence and all of those insights that you can get out of using it. So it's really helps as a key differentiator in better service.
And Chris, to point out that we talked about millennials before being the purchasing side of this engine. There's also a high number of millennials that are in the employee section, right? That are part of your workforce. And they've come to expect, they're digital natives. They grew up in the digital environment. And they've come to expect tools to be efficient in their marketplace. And I think in retail, specifically, you'll see a very high turnover rate. In some cases, it can be in 60, as high as 90%, because people have an expectation when they come into working into the modern economy, and it doesn't necessarily match up with the things that they think a large organization or strong retailer would provide. And so with that churn, I think you'll see even what do we say? I think the latest stats are 3,200 to 3,500, depending on your stat number, as far as the cost to train up, bring an employee in, and get them involved. And Microsoft, we consider ourselves one of the strongest productivity companies on the planet. We've got a lot of tools that we can provide to, one, enhance that experience, keep your turnover rates very low. And then not only, as Chris was mentioning, keep those valuable IP that you've trained into your associates or your team members, but also leverage it to cross-sell and upsell and really give that better experience that we hear the new modern shoppers looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one plug I just wanted to put on this slide here. This picture is one of our stock brand photos. We have a great brand department that makes these. But this device specifically, this is in our retail execution center where we show a lot of the latest cutting edge technology that can be applied today. This is actually a fully fledged Windows 10 device. It's an IoT based, so it's an Internet of Things based device. But you can bake artificial intelligence directly into this. Plus, you have the connectivity of the Internet of Things in a retail location. So this is a great example of something where you can put this artificial intelligence literally in the hands of your employees. As you can see, it's a very small type computer, and really empower people to do more through it. Absolutely. Great. And so that's retail employees on the floor interacting with people as they come in and out. And you also have smart contact centers, call centers. We're seeing a lot of people starting to experiment with AI in their call centers and start to embed this in their call centers. And later at the end, we have some really great examples of where we've seen this really shine. And a couple stats on this slide here. I don't want to beat them too much, but I think the key takeaways here is the disruption that's poised and happening in call centers today. And where, but another key thing to think about as you're thinking about this is not so much as a job replacer, as a job disruptor. It is going to help people in call centers do their job better and more efficiently. And I think that's just a real key point. I think we've come back to it a few times, but I can't underscore it enough. And we'll talk about that a bit in the next few slides as well. So one of the big drivers here is, this is some pretty interesting data from Gartner, is the real desire for people to get self-service. It's a real driving force. And if you look at 2017, almost half of customers are asking for or getting self-service from websites or, from however they get it. But as technology gets better and moves forward, you're going to see the ability to give people even better self-service. If you start integrating these conversational interfaces into call centers, into contact centers, I think it's projected that this number is going to go way up. Agent interaction isn't just going to go down incrementally, it's going to go way down. And the reason it's going to go way down is because you'll have this frontline customer self-service through the AI, purely driven AI interaction. But then, going back to the same exact concepts we talk about the retail employees on the floor, your agents will have this AI baked into their workflow, and so you'll have this agent-assisted self-service as well.
Great point. Yeah.
And so this is, a little bit what it looks like. I think this is a click-through slide here on different ways where really, a customer is going to interact through the call center, and this enables you to get those smart recommendations, personalizations, and this is really driving that. We're calling it the call center of the future here, but we're seeing people implement these things today. So it's maybe the call center of the future for all call centers, but this is a very real shift that's happening. And all of this data, to make it even better, as people are interacting and you can translate voice to text, do sentiment analysis on it, do keyword extraction, you can take all that data, dashboard it really easily. It integrates extremely well across our stack. And now you have these real-time live stats and dashboards that you can push up to business owners to make decisions, in real time if you want to, but be able to really identify problems as they happen and continually optimize your operations. And this is just a screenshot of what it looks like. We already have this baked into Dynamics. So, this is, in fact, even a product that is available today.
Sure.
So, and here you'll see the screen that someone in a call center would be looking at. You'll see they have all the CRM, so they know everything about the customer. They can have that full transcript of all the conversations they've had through the artificial intelligence, through the conversational bots over time, no matter where those touch points were. And that goes all the way back to the beginning of that unified experience. This is kind of what, the interface looks like today.
Sure. And to follow up on that, I think in Dynamics, it's good to note how we use this inside of Microsoft today. There's a relationship health assistant that we have released inside of Dynamics that our own sales teams use as well, specifically our small to medium market. And if you think about a sales individual or a call center person who has 300 some accounts he's got to call on, that's a lot to have a personalized piece of information to know specifically when you called, when you sent email, when to follow up. And what the relationship assistant does is it takes into account all the emails you've sent, the frequency that you've sent those emails, when you've sent calls, when people have read them, if they haven't read them, and then when the potential quota or an enterprise agreement or a licensing agreement is getting ready to come up. It brings in all those factors, and the relationship assistant provides you with recommendations every morning to say, here's your top list, here's some that you've sent a lot of content to that haven't read any of your information in a while, and you've got a quota that's coming up in the next month. So that is another assisted tool that we have internally out of Dynamics that allows sales folks within their operations space to move forward and keep their customer lists that are that large under wraps.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So we're going to get into optimizing your operations here. And I think I mentioned this a little bit before, that there is so much in the back end where you can take and use AI. And I'm going to throw in machine learning and recommendations in here into this conversation now as well to help outbound marketing organizations look at campaign management and how to effectively find the right individual, see what type of promotional cross-sell, upsell, and the probability of doing that, and integrate that into marketing automation tools. As I mentioned, financial teams looking at their forecast. We in Microsoft have brought in machine learning and AI to take it, and we had some ridiculous numbers, like 30 different people working on a forecast that had a variance of about 20-ish%, down to 3 people with a variance of close to 5 to 3%. So it was an incredibly big number to help get your forecast accurate, depending on if you're going at costing or revenue from a P&L perspective. We've also used this in our own internal call centers. I'm going to get into some specifics around that in a little bit. Merchandisers have used this for inventory optimization. So you can, anyone can show you how well product sells on its shelf by itself. But when you take into account cross-sell, upsell, cannibalization of products, right, you're able to then see what the lift is of that product around everything else near it. So you can determine what we'll call, or maybe some hidden stars, products you don't have a lot of out there, but have a high lift, right, to the other products that are sitting around it. Conversely, you can see the ones that you might have out there routinely that have a negative lift down to each specific zip code and product. So we can get very specific on how to recommend those. And then I've got a quick slide here that talks a little bit about how to leverage that data estate for actionable recommendations. One of the first things that we do, and we talk about customers that they have, is they rich valuable IP with, we'll say maybe 3 years of sales transactions, marketing information that they can put together, but that usually only paints about half the story. It doesn't tell all of the, you'll only get, I guess, a small, narrow view of the entire economy in the marketplace. And then we talk about enhancing it with third-party or marketplace data. That's socioeconomic, weather, hotel occupancy rate, sporting events, all these different external pieces to come in and help with decision-making. And you can start to get much more predictive in your sales DNA, or understanding how to explain how products or people are or aren't buying things on your shelf and where they're moving. But you've got to do something with all this data. You're bringing it all together and you have to make sense of it. And that's where you've got to identify the right leading indicators. You've got to provide signals within the signals, right, and understand those. And we on our platform have hardened models on the Azure Marketplace. Folks like Chris have helped train data scientists on our platform. As you said, he's helped other developers build bots. So you can integrate and bring all that data together on our platform, where we've hardened some solutions where it can get pretty quick. We talk about SKU optimization or inventory optimization. We can train models in as fast as about a month with ingestion of data, training of model. And then when we talk about sales driver analysis, integrating all these things, and I know the sourcing the data can take a long time, but the training of the model can, for that type of complex solution, can take maybe a couple of months in there. So, that fast to get some pretty predictive models. However, once you've got all this data, you then have to get this into the hands of your store associates, of your marketers. You've got to get it into the hands of people who can enact on these insights. And that's the last mile, where you can integrate it into marketing campaigns. You can get it into your customer dashboard, your employee dashboards. You want to unlock this data and get it into the hands of people who can leverage it. And then, as you mentioned before, Chris, integrated in a lot of your current execution stacks today. We see a lot of CPG companies today. If I can pause for a minute on them, you'll see a lot of brands that are impacted by that retail right sizing that I'm talking about. So through no fault of their own, through no change of their own, they've seen their channels right size and shrink. And their market caps have been hit to the point where some of them have gone out of business. When we talked before about bots helping build relationships, creating affinity, engaging your customers. The CPG companies are working through a better understanding of getting that direct connection with your customer, and both machine learning, better understanding them, getting the propensity of customers to buy, getting a sanitized data together of those customers, and then engaging them through your call centers or your website is a great way to insulate yourself from some of those external changes that are happening in the marketplace today.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It brings it all together.
Yeah.
And the last technical piece I wanted to touch on, I couldn't resist not talking about it because it's a big hot button right now, is RPA, which is robotic process automation. Sure. And I think a lot of people hear this and they think, what, robots, what? Actually, there's an awesome video about cobots, which you should go check out. It's on YouTube, I think. But that's a complete aside. It's a lot of fun. Robotic process automation. And when we're talking about robots in this context, we're talking about AI-based bots. And really, this is just kind of the next generation of process automation. And this allows you to use artificial intelligence to automate processes that before were very, very difficult to automate and were just had to be done manually. But if you look at some examples here, the ability to reduce items that are out of stock or find products that are misplaced, if you think about that, how do you automate something like that? At one point it was very difficult. But if you think about every single retail location has cameras, they have loss prevention cameras. And so they're collecting data, be able to apply image analysis to that data. You have extremely rich information about your environment, and that enables you to automate things like that you previously weren't able to automate. And those are just a few examples, but there are lots of different opportunities to apply artificial intelligence now to get to RPA, or better process automation, robotic process automation, using these tools and APIs.
Not to put Chris on the spot, but to share a little bit about himself personally, I think he's created a robot that sorts your laundry.
Yes, that's something that I've been working on with my children because it's extremely painful. That's actually a great example of a cobot. That's a robot that I work with, and it helps me do my job better at home.
I will be one of your first beta testers when you're ready to release that to the market.
Absolutely.
My children will want to be. I've outsourced that to them. They hate doing it and would love any type of assisted co-botting in the laundry business. So customer spotlight here. There are three public examples that we have. We talked about some others that we have with Progressive, for example. But when we operate at scale, Macy's is one of the largest department stores here in the U.S. Hewlett-Packard, again, large brand that's both a CPG company and a manufacturing company that sells through many different other retailers. And then ourselves, Microsoft. We're a little bit in that same bucket, right? Like, we make products that will sell through our other retailers. We also have our own direct channel, our own retail environments where we'll sell directly to. And we also create a lot of products. We manufacture, Xbox, Surface, and not to be said or not to be left out is our software and cloud-based solutions that we have as well. So we'll get into Microsoft a little more specifically. So we released, I guess if we go back to Microsoft customer service and support, if you look at the chart here, since September, 100% of our visitors that go to support.microsoft.com see a virtual agent. If they want to speak to someone on Microsoft, they speak to that virtual agent first. And we're also adding the agent presence, let's say, to our other products like support@xbox.com that's coming in the near future. So in addition to that, we also have 100% of our customer agents right now receive agent assist experience. So that shows them in dynamic, in real time, suggested responses that we've spoken about before. So let's talk about some of the examples here, some of the impacts that it has. So right there, you can see in the first slide, or in the first chart, since we've launched, it's been a 2x increase in the number of customers that can now use self-help to address their concerns and issues that they come to us with. And that's a continued reduction. If you think about, you talked about the customer self-help before. That's just a huge amount that goes into there that can then either A, reduce cost, or give agents more time to work on those more difficult problems. As a benefit, or as a side product, some organizations have actually seen the work health index, or the surveys that customers or the agents leave as far as satisfaction, go higher because they're not working on those same issues and problems over and over. over again.
Absolutely. That's my favorite part of this case study as well. We saw the same thing in our own call centers. Job satisfaction actually went up.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also see that, as we talked about it, improve the experience of our customer service reps, right? So we talked about that when we reduce the number of incorrect, so that's the incorrect transferred calls. I think that's gone down almost eightfold as far as incorrect transfers where, an agent might hear something differently and move it over. The bots have reduced that from 16% all the way down to 2%. And that's an incredible reduction in errors that really have negative NSAT or customer satisfaction to our brand. So those are just a few of the stats that we've seen inside of Microsoft that we're easily able to share personally. Now, if we talk about an external story, so Macy's, there's some stats on the slide that you can see there around this, retail giant. So they're $26 billion giant servicing over 100 customers. Interesting stats, 7 million calls they receive a day. And they're trying to move towards frictionless, consistent, and personalized service, some of the things that we talked about before. Now, in there, Macy's has a virtual agent that provides conversational, multi-turn, text-based interfaces that connects to Macy's internal system APIs, and that's to access information about merchandising orders. It looks like offering for customers in real time for common inquiries that people have. The two main areas that they're focused on right now are customer checkout and order inquiry. And it allows them to do so much more than just answer questions. It actually solves problems. And there's actually a quote in here from the head of Macy's VP of their call center. So let's see if I have it right. If the customer is looking for a coupon, the virtual agent knows what is already in her shopping bag and applies any relevant discount offers. If the customer has selected an item that they may take a few extra days to arrive, the virtual agent can query the inventory of local stores and see that it's also available for immediate pickup. Finally, it can also provide merchandise recommendations and look up customers' reward points, right? So, that's a lot they can do. And just within that first few months, the virtual agent is able to answer a third of the customer inquiries. And we talked about this before. It frees up the agents to handle those more difficult conversations. Currently, they see self-help within their own success rates is about 25%, but they only expect that to increase with the amount of work that they're doing today.
That's just great customer service.
Yeah. So summary.
Yeah. So to wrap it up, we talked about lots of different applications of artificial intelligence in the retail context. At the end of the day, if you don't remember anything else from our talk, AI enhances customer experiences. It creates better customer service. It can help make retail employees more productive. It improves their service and can improve their job satisfaction as well. Because those employees really expect this technology not only in their life that they're used to, but in work as well. So I encourage you, go out and start building bots. The website's out there. We've got lots of tools out there. Getting started with AI, we've got a ton of resources. We have our own virtual academy online. We have labs. And then you can find us on LinkedIn and ask us questions if you want.
That's right. Thanks, everyone. We really appreciate your time today. We look forward to talking to you again real soon.
Yep. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.